Alright folks, the trailer for King of the Hill Season 15, their second revival season, is officially here and there is plenty to dig into. Maybe not as much as last year's trailer since we were all speculating about the entire series premise at that point, but there is lots to love and lots to explore about this trailer, so let's get into it. And hey, if you like this breakdown, I've got tons of other King of the Hill videos, including breakdowns for every episode from last season, but also tons of character and lore videos from the original run as well. Consider subscribing and sticking around for coverage of the new season if you like this video. Thanks. The trailer starts with Hank and Peggy sitting in church, basically reiterating the premise of the revival, that Hank and Peggy have a lot of time on their hands in retirement to try new things. Peggy says, "We have plenty of time now that Bobby's out of the house," and Hank says, "Maybe I can do something with my hands," after which we cut to a shot of him on Big Tex, welding Big Tex's fingers back on. Now, Big Tex is an actual 55-foot cowboy statue showcased at the Texas State Fair, and he was also featured in the previous King of the Hill episode, Girl, You'll Be a Giant Soon. That episode was heavily centered around a major Hank and Luann conflict, and so part of me is indeed hoping that this might at least reference Luann in some way, even if that's small. I feel like it would be weird for Hank to be that high up on Big Tex without remembering the time Luann holed up in his head, bringing a screeching halt to the State Fair's events, but otherwise this does just seem like something that Hank could be doing in his spare time, taking up welding and some kind of craftsmanship, and obviously he would jump at the chance to work on Big Tex. Hank says he always says to never leave home without his welder's kit, a very Hank Hill thing to say, and this leads to the first solid joke here from Bill.
He does always say that, but I still often forget.
The trailer then dives straight into Bobby and Connie storylines, and as far as season 14 goes, this was the big serialized through line for sure. Bobby and Connie reconnecting as friends, and then eventually deciding that they should start dating again. And I like that this season is just diving straight back into the Bobby and Connie of it all, exploring what their relationship might look like as young adults. The first thing it showcases is Bobby going home with Connie for the weekend, hinting at conflict with Con and Min.
"It's important your parents know I'm a man."
This is obviously a really natural way to continue this storyline since Con and Min have never liked Bobby, and so he and Connie reconnecting and officially dating, especially after she dated Chain Wasanasong, who they always loved, would definitely not land with them very well. We see Min tell him to carry Connie's bags to the door and then bail, and then we actually see Con stepping out of Bill's house, which I think is likely a continuation of the divorce storyline from last season, another more serialized aspect of the revival, and I think this is a really fun development if Con is indeed living with Bill. That's just a fun pairing. It'll be interesting to see how Con actually adjusts to single life and how he and Bill affect each other's lives. And also I like the potential of having Con and Min's conflicts sort of affect the neighborhood from across the street. Next, Hank looks at Instagram and says that Bobby and Connie are now official, which Boomhauer calls a hard launch, and we hear Con lament this from afar. This is definitely the episode titled Failure to Hard Launch, which I expect will explore the difficulties Bobby and Connie might face taking their relationship public, which also makes sense since Bobby and Chain Wasanasong are business partners and Connie used to date Chain. There's a lot that they can explore here. Again, they seem to be really naturally continuing this relationship and exploring natural milestones. It's fitting for like the grounded reality of King of the Hill. Next, an episode idea that I am genuinely ecstatic for, Hank and Peggy taking up golf. Peggy misses a putt and absolutely smashes the putter into the green, which Hank says is bad golf etiquette. Peggy asks about the etiquette of shoving the putter into his mouth.
It's frowned upon.
And I think this is such a great story idea for Hank and Peggy. Obviously, we know that Hank has had a long-standing love for golf, first explored back in like the 4th episode of the entire series, Hank's Got the Willies, but we also see it in A Man Without a Country Club in season 6, and then in Glen Peggy, Glen Ross, he buys a set of golf clubs that may have been used as murder weapons, so his love for golf is across the series. But what really excites me here is Peggy getting into golfing via retirement. Peggy's whole shtick is obviously thinking very highly of herself, near delusional overconfidence. And golf is just a notoriously difficult game to play, and one that will actually make her reconcile with the idea that she can't do everything she thinks she can. It could be a really interesting learning and growth episode for Peggy. Next, we see Hank, Peggy, and 4 other random people in a boat.
"Hank and I have learned our communication skills could be a little better."
Since the boat is called Relationship, and these other folks seem to maybe be other couples, and based on what Peggy is saying here, I think this might be Peggy and Hank leading some kind of couples counseling retreat. Something I expect Peggy insisted they do, and Hank was not particularly excited for. Next, we get some more Bobby/Connie relationship focus. We see Bobby on what I expect is the King of the Grill competition that was hinted at last season, since we see here that he has a name tag. Next to him is another contestant named Claire. Then we go to a scene where Connie implies that that Claire has a crush on Bobby. Bobby denies this, and then we immediately cut to a scene where Claire kisses Bobby, with Connie walking in right when it happens. Now, it's clear that Bobby did not expect this to happen. I mean, this actually feels about as close as we've ever gotten to Bobby doing a "Bwah!" Connie walks in at the exact wrong time, and honestly, I think this is a good conflict because it feels like Bobby's naivete in this circumstance would lead him to just not understand that Claire was into him, or at least I think they can sell that idea at the very least. Bobby is just such a kind and charismatic and naturally personable guy. He might not have realized that Claire was flirting with him. It's a solid conflict for a young relationship to deal with. Next, we get a little sequence where Hank and Peggy are seemingly on the phone with Bobby, who tells them he needs money to get bailed out of jail, only for them to rush over to Nancy's, who is on FaceTime with Joseph and Bobby, and she lets them know that they probably got scammed. I think this is a pretty great modern issue to press Hank and Peggy up against. It seems like Bobby and Joseph are on vacation here, and these scammers used a voice cloner to get money out of Hank and Peggy. Definitely modern tech that Hank and Peggy wouldn't be privy to when looking out for these kinds of scams. And let's be honest, neither Hank nor Peggy have the best track record with these kinds of things. Peggy fell victim to that Mensa scam back in season 6 in The Substitute Spanish Prisoner, and we learned that Hank had been paying literal sticker price for all of his cars for his entire life, thinking the salesman was cutting him a deal. So they're both, potentially prone to scam. But this is definitely a new angle that would blindside both of them. I think they would have a hard time wrapping their heads around Bobby's voice being cloned by AI. Next, this cuts to Hank and Bobby arguing about Hank's ability to keep the family quote-unquote protected, and Bobby saying maybe Hank isn't that guy anymore. I expect that this is a follow-up to Hank getting scammed, particularly because we see that Bobby is super sunburned here, with a sunglasses tan line on his face, and in that previous shot on FaceTime, we saw him in the pool with sunglasses on, so very likely the same episode. However, as he says this, we also get a shot of Hank falling off of Big Tex and hanging on for dear life. Pretty scary, honestly. I was curious about the safety aspect of Hank climbing up there. It honestly feels very un-Hank-like. I think this is likely a different episode than the scam one, and I'm very curious about that episode. Why is Hank fixing Big Tex? Was he hired, or since it seems to be late at night and not particularly safe, is he doing it on the sly? I wonder if he was upset about the way Big Tex was being maintained and decided to just fix it himself without the state fair knowing. And then we get a real quality Hank Hill moment as he laments a truck parked in front of his house, as he fears that people will think the truck belongs to him.
It's electric.
This is another pretty great modernism for Hank to press up against. Obviously, he is a big truck guy. It's been the subject of multiple episodes, in particular Chasing Bobby, in which Hank gets super emotional about his beloved truck finally dying, and then is subsequently won over by the new truck that he would go on to buy, and the one that he still drives to this day. He kept it in storage and got it out of storage in the first episode of the revival. But an electric truck is kind of the perfect thing to make Hank, make that face. Though I am curious if he'll find any integrity in some of the modern bells and whistles it's bound to have. Next, we see a little scene where the guys are playing football, tackling Dale, though Dale seems to have been actually hurt here. I wonder if this is them sort of just reliving their high school days, as we know they all were on the football team together. Even Dale, who if I recall was the towel boy, but it's cute. They all look really happy. Next, we see a shot of a mascot with a t-shirt gun during a basketball game, accidentally shooting the gun backwards into a player. We hear Bobby say it's showtime over this clip. This is actually the UT Dallas mascot T-Mock, which you might notice is a very cleverly Comet spelled backwards. UT Dallas is where Connie goes to school, so this tracks, but I am curious if this is Bobby in the mascot suit or not. Obviously, it makes it seem like it's Bobby since they have Bobby say it's showtime over the shot, but that could very easily be trailer editing trickery, and Bobby does have mascot experience as seen in What Makes Bobby Run back in season 5, so if it is him, it could be a bit of a throwback to that. Side note, you can also actually see the girl that Bobby hooked up with in the first episode of the revival sitting up in the bleachers here. Maybe just a background character, or maybe she'll play a role again somehow. Next, we see a few shots of some sort of convention with Hank trying to pass out Robota chain flyers to a bunch of folks in cosplay. A great scenario to make Hank uncomfortable. He seems to get into a conflict with a con-goer who claims Hank thinks they're all freaks and weirdos. Now, I think this is going to be the episode that involves Bobby's food truck that we've seen in both the new poster, as well as a promotional image released a few weeks ago. For one, we can see part of the food truck on the flyer, and two, in that promotional image, we see a couple of other folks in cosplay. You can even see this same girl in the promo image behind Hank and Bobby for a moment in this shot. I love the idea of Hank at one of these kinds of Comic-Con type events. Obviously, that is a world that he would find completely strange and foreign and have a really hard time wrapping his head around, but I also think there are aspects of their devotion and passion that might be able to get through to Hank. We know Hank himself has gone to a mower expo before, which is basically just a lawn care convention. Next, there is a quick shot of Peggy, Min, and Nancy giggling in the alley at night. This I found pretty interesting, but Nancy is seen using a hand fan, something we also see Peggy using in that first poster that released a few weeks back. I'm curious if there's some sort of heat wave episode and the girls all hit the alley because they can't sleep. Sleep deprivation might also explain their giggly state here. Next, we see some of the most exciting moments in the trailer for me. First, Buck Strickland falling to his knees and begging for some kind of help from Hank, and then the Strickland gang, Joe Jack, Enrique, and Roger Buddha Sack, with Joe Jack saying, "I knew we could count on you, honey." These are two really quick moments, but this reads to me like Buck and or the Strickland gang asking for Hank's help, probably with something Strickland propane related. We see the guys are all still wearing their Strickland gear. Previously, I thought that Strickland must have gone out of business since it wasn't really mentioned in the present tense in season 14, but this makes me rethink that, obviously. And it especially makes me wonder what would have happened to see Hank actually leave Strickland Propane. I mean, to be fair, Buck never truly appreciated the work Hank put into that place. I'm sure he got a really good offer from Aramco to go to Saudi Arabia, and I bet Strickland did not match it. And maybe Buck begging Hank for something here could be an indication that he realized the error of his ways. In that previous poster, we also see Hank wearing his Strickland jacket again, so I wonder if he's actually going to go back to work at Strickland despite having retired at this point. If he does, I expect he will finally get that manager position. Next, we see this goofy-ass little dog that the Hills seem to have adopted, barking at Bobby's room, causing Hank to walk in on Bobby and Connie. Okay, actually, that was a certified Bobby Bois. A Bobby. Obviously, a couple big things to talk about here, but first, let's focus on that dog. We also see Hank and Peggy looking over this dog in the pool in the new poster, and the first poster we got both featured Hank holding a dog leash, and there was a dog toy near the fence. Just at a glance, this is the perfect kind of dog for the Hills to get. This thing is a goofy-looking, mangy, scrappy little mutt, and Hank has always been a bit snobby about his purebred bloodhound in Ladybird. It's a great way to challenge Hank's perception of what a dog is or should be, and hopefully this gives us some kind of flashback or major allusion to Ladybird, since she has obviously passed since the original run. This is one of the stories I am most looking forward to. The rest of the scene plays out as not only Hank and Peggy walk in on Bobby and Connie, but Con and Min end up seeing them all through the window.
We were just warming each other up.
Stop.
That's enough. Ew.
Shut up.
Again, just another natural way to have Hank and co be faced with discomfort from the realities of their kids growing up and becoming adults. Obviously, I expect this kind of thing in particular will be more of a struggle for Con and Min since they hate Bobby, but it's clearly also very uncomfortable for Hank and Peggy. Tons to look forward to here, obviously. There are a couple other things that I think we can deduce from the two posters released as well. In the first, we see Dale holding a magnet rope, which is for magnet fishing, trying to trudge up metallic objects underwater, basically. And in the second poster, he is in full scuba gear, so I expect we're going to be getting a full-on Dale scuba magnet fishing subplot sometime this year. The poster also shows Min shoving Con into the pool, and she's shoving him onto Bill. Combined with the fact that we see Con coming out of Bill's house in the trailer, I think this is probably a subtle indicator that Con has been kicked out of the house and is living with Bill now. I also love that Emilio got a spot on the poster, absolutely the MVP of new characters in the revival, but I also hope we get some expansion on other new characters. I actually really liked Willow in the few episodes she was in last season, but it also felt like characters like Brian Robertson could have been used a bit more. He just didn't really feel fleshed out. You can't waste Keith David, I mean, come on. But overall, there is a ton to be excited about here. It kind of looks like the show just hasn't missed a beat and is continuing to push the characters forward into exciting new places in life, while also having mostly tasteful allusions and references to aspects of the original run. This year, I once again plan to do full breakdowns for every single episode, and also probably reactions that will be available on my Patreon, and I might do cut down reactions of the entire season over on my other channel, Johnny Too Casual, once I've released all of my breakdowns. You can actually see my reaction and immediate thoughts on this trailer after having watched it over on Johnny Too Casual right now, if this wasn't quite enough for you, but this was more thorough than that. So stay tuned, July 20th, all 10 episodes of King of the Hill Season 15 drop, and I will be ready to cover all of it. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned for more. Peace.
I stay mellow watching Johnny Too Cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny Too Cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.